check audio test 1, 2, 3. Okay. And I was talking to Glenn in the chat, but Glenn said he wouldn't be here today. He might not be able to make it.
Yeah, he said it was iffy if he would come. Hi, Heiner.
It's exciting to have Heiner here.
Yeah, there he is. He's having his breakfast or lunch, probably, or maybe dinner. Can't find the button. There he goes. Now you got it.
I'm totally between schedules. I mean, it's a nightmare of skirmishes, not only in the capital, but also on certain lists. And I'm thinking about to retire, closing Facebook and really focusing on what is really important and where I can make a difference. I tell you, I'm really tired. Even this is only Saturday and not Sunday.
We'll make good art. When things go to hell in a handbasket, no matter what happens, make good art.
That's why I'm hanging around to see who's remaining on Facebook and coming back out of retirement, because the shit hit the fan. The government came around to our point of view about global warming, decided to, instead of investing the trillions of dollars into missiles, they decide to invest it into climate reduction, warming reduction, CO2 sequestration.
Yeah.
I have a housekeeping question to the chair, or to the, how do you say?
Host.
I cannot enter with the machine I wanted to enter. It asks me a password.
Let me check. I will tell you if there's a password. Let's see. Yes, there's a password. So the password, are you ready to write this down? Because it's digits.
Copy it into the chat.
Oh, yeah, I can put it in the chat. That's fine. That's a good idea. That is the password in the chat, and this is the link. Now the link doesn't actually include the password. Normally it would, but it doesn't. So you have to put the password in manually. It possibly because Sam switched the hosting over to me. Maybe that's why it changed. I don't know.
And if you've got the correct link, you might get the generated password.
Yeah, it looks like Sam made me the host without actually mentioning it. Let me just see if that's correct. No, he's a host and I'm a co-host. Actually, we're all co-hosts. Yeah, he made everybody a co-host. So that means anybody can let anybody in, because Sam may not be Facebook, just the GCC is going to leave Facebook.
What about Zoom? Where are we going to have our Zoom session?
Zoom is not part of Facebook. Zoom is Zoom.
Yeah, but which Facebook group are we going to find our Zoom links?
None. We'll be either communicating on Zulip, or we'll be communicating on some other platform other than Facebook.
Well, I can put them on Facebook because I've got a Facebook
You
group.
You can replicate it any place, including email.
Facebook group I've got is Group Startup, and P2TP Bioscope is on Facebook as well.
Right. You can put it there.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, Doug puts his notices both in GCC and on his own timeline.
Yeah.
And sometimes he only puts it in one of the two, and you got to go find which one he put the notice in.
You can use a page on your WordSpace account.
I see. Kayla has her hand back up, or maybe you didn't take it down.
Oh no, I didn't take it down. Sorry. I'll take it down right now.
You can put up an announcement on your WordSpace account.
You can put announcements any place. You don't have to put it just one place. You put any place where you think people are going to find it.
Well, that's right. Some people have got a web page on several different platforms.
I do. I've got a presence on probably half a dozen different platforms
Yeah,
around.
well, that's
the internet.
when you got links to my platforms. If these are linked, every time you have a link, you're teaching the AI that there's a connection to look at.
Yeah.
All the robots are looking for those connections. The bots are all looking for advertising data and metadata, and they're trawling, scouring the internet constantly, 24/7.
Yeah. My archive websites, which are now getting to be more than 20 years old, Google has stopped finding them. So now when I put up a search for something I know is on one of my websites, if it's on one of my archives, Google doesn't report it anymore. They only want to report the newest websites and not the archives. So I sort of have to refresh, or I have to make an anthology on a new website that points to the stuff on the archive website, or else I can't find it anymore.
Oh, I've got some Google code that I add to my website. The Google tag goes in the header.
Yeah.
I have a question as far as formats and peoples and groups. What is the target audience for, you could say, GCC members or trying to reach new members? I know I wanted to ask Heiner before. He has a certain arc to his interests, which is about scaling out across the globe. Now, he was saying global as well, but he wants to see many people represented. He wants to scale, he wants to grow, have larger conversations. I might have misheard that, but that would be something Heiner wants to do. Alex wants to do something else. Barry might want to do something else. Doug is doing something else. I'm doing something else, but we're all kind of going around with our own thing, seeing how it can be useful to somebody else, or a different view of the same thing.
That's why.
And my big word is here. Why I'm here is about coexistence. And one of the constraints I find to coexistence is different worldviews. So that's where I hammer away. And that's why people need to adapt to each other with different worldviews instead of just giving each other an indication that they're not interested.
That's why I started the Links Plus page. It's lots of people had different projects. Lots of people were doing different things. And Links
So
Plus,
if you're going to drop Facebook, why?
Links Plus was a place.
Because it's dysfunctional.
Well, people,
Yes, but so isn't the world. And it's got the largest reach. So it's got the largest reach depending on who your target audience is. That's why I asked, who is the target audience?
Today, my target audience is my brother, and he called me on the phone, and he says, "Oh, send me that thing you're talking about." I went to his timeline, and Facebook wouldn't let me post it on my own brother's timeline. A memory from our youth that I had written a blog post about. Wouldn't let me.
And I appreciate that. That's from a personal context, and that's a good example of but I'm talking about the group, and I've had discussions about what is the GCC group, and it's been a topic ever since the group actually started, and it has been emerging, changing, evolving into different things. But overall, that is I think the thing we have to keep in focus is each other's skill set, interest, and what is the GCC doing to help be a platform for that. Kayla's got her hand up.
Unless Sam recovers from his stomach ache, I don't know if he's going to answer that question. He's the only person here who I think could give you a solid answer, and he's not feeling well today.
Can I say something about Colin's question? Because
I did a gem on that. Sam did say what he's here for.
When people have links to websites, and the links to the websites are there because the websites contain their ideas and the things they want to share. So the reason I created Links Plus is so that they can put a Links Plus page on their website and have all those links coagulated.
That's good. You know what I mean? Kayla's got her hand up again.
I was going to say, Alex. Kayla's got her hand back up, I think. I don't remember seeing it. She took it down.
She's got to sing out and let us know.
Go ahead,
I
Kayla.
do have my hand up. I just kind of want to agree with Colin as far as Facebook is concerned, as much as I don't like it. Okay, let me backtrack here. If Facebook is representative of the world and worldviews, our values are fucked. I
You're right.
mean, you know, people are still in their small, narrow-minded world, you know, still really believing the values that have been fed to them for centuries, you know. But at the same time, if Facebook represents that, we really shouldn't encourage a band-aid removing it, if you know what I'm saying. You know, it's somehow, if we can, you know, as people sort of infiltrate Facebook and move it towards a more valued platform, that would be ideal, right? In our global views to elevating our vibration. But I don't know, at the same time, I mean, do we have to really leave Facebook? Or what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, whatever is in my mind is not coming out through my mouth, right?
We don't have to totally abandon it. We don't have to turn our back on Facebook, but we can't, I don't know that we can continue to use it as the front of our store, maybe the back door, the side door, but not the front door anymore, because it's turning a lot of people off, and it's dysfunctional. It's increasingly dysfunctional. I mean, Sam got blocked for 4 days for posting an image from the riots on the January 6th. I got blocked for 4 days for reposting a Carl Jung quote that Facebook fed me as a memory from 2 years ago. And then they warned me today I couldn't send a message to my brother about what we were talking about on the phone this morning, which was a memory from, you know, the 1940s.
Yeah, well, it's
I don't know.
update the algorithm that things that used to be acceptable will start getting blocked because the policy is changing as well.
Yeah, or the
Well,
bots are just erratic.
Here's a good example of man meets machine people adapter, right? And our freedom of speech and our freedom of memories. You know, and the difference between Google in China and Google here, right? So there's something about how technology adapts to people as well as how people adapt to people. And you really have to frame the context of what that engagement is, because there is no one size fits all other than, should we discuss this?
There is an answer to that in technology. There's a concept called human factors engineering. So when you create a user interface, like on Windows or Macintosh or any application program, or the telephone network, which is where I learned about it, you have a technology and it has to interact with the user, human. And human factors says, how do you make the user interface compatible with the user so the user can interact with it without having to study a complicated manual that you need a certificate, you know, to learn how to use. And so human factors design is a big deal, and it ain't easy. Entire departments do human factors engineering whenever they design a piece of technology that has to be used by ordinary people. Everybody learned to use a telephone. They were very simple, you know, and in fact, when they went to all number dialing and they got rid of the letters because people got screwed up with the letters, they found that they had to put a white dot, painted white dot inside the finger hole when you had a rotary dial. If you didn't put a white dot inside of it, people couldn't put their finger in the hole. And that's all it took. If the inside of the hole was just black and the symbols were on the outside, people would aim at the symbols and not the hole. And I knew the guy who said, put a white dot in the middle of the hole and people will put their finger in it. That's human factors engineering. The idea is simple, but it takes a PhD in psychology to figure it out.
Yeah, that's called material design in web world, yeah. Or, you know, layout. And I assume everybody's noticed the simplification of actions in mobile apps and websites where something will guide you to the next thing. And I think the next thing is being ready, and the next thing is another big concept that I have here at this group. So, so knowing what to do next, and sometimes the Socratic method can take somebody through that stepwise process of something to learn. Or a journey map can show other people what you tried next.
If we don't,
A calendar,
yeah.
a calendar is very, very useful for trying to figure out what's next and keeping track
I
of
can
things.
understand it's
But a
the
journey
AI
map is where you could add things along the way that aren't just calendar dates. But it's really just a concept of this journey map thing. But that's all it needs to be.
Well, we come here and talk about our ideas, but if we're not uniting as a force for the ideas, then we all become susceptible to this AI slavery. We become sheep, and the AI is taking us for a ride.
Well, the question is, if Facebook keeps banning people like Sam, do they find other platforms and point to them, and people do start to leave Facebook? Or, the government's involved in all of this stuff too.
Who pays the piper? Who pays the piper? Calls the tune.
Well, they want to create an infrastructure so they can advertise our wants and needs and things, and diagnosis. I think this is the best system the government's ever had to be able to understand their populace, is have mobile phones and social networks. It's got to be a full-time job for a bunch of people, as we know. And classifying people. Yeah, that's what it's about. It's about classifying people.
Advertisers
right?
who want to know what you like. They want to know your likes and dislikes and your habits.
Right.
So they can target you without wasting money on other platforms. They want to know where you visit, who you talk to, and what you talk about.
Yes, thanks for that, Alex. So the point I'm getting at is that, these platforms have us as their target audience. And if they're doing things that we find block our freedom of speech, and that's where I'm headed,
Yeah.
how do we, and freedom of memory is what Barry's coming across. The system that used to work for his memory failed him today. So that's what we're up against. We're up against the difference between advertising our stuff, our GCC stuff to other people, or I don't think trying to organize our stuff on Facebook is useful. I think it's interesting, like Twitter, for putting out, current things. But when you get into something serious, you don't do it on Facebook. You do it in your research place.
In your lab, yeah. There's a huge movement. It's evolving and emerging from the underground of the dark web and other places, and they call it the awakening, the Great Awakening, where people are realizing their own sovereignty and how much they've been duped by this big dollars corporations that advertise.
Heiner has his hand up.
Hello, Heiner.
Alex, let's go to Heiner.
Yes, listen, the moment I speak, my image is there. And I think it's a very good standard, because otherwise you cannot maybe not even understand me, because understanding has a very broad bandwidth. But what I wanted to say is something very different. It is not about freedom of words. We presently have a fight with YouTube. We did here a concert, and the algorithms, the automata, always hinders us to put up the video because there is music on it. And we have the music of the musician who is singing and playing guitar and everything, but they have only automatic machine who identify some kind of art form. And if we allow that to continue, then you have a struggle over months or even longer with lawyers that even the artist cannot present his piece. And we are just the stage for allowing him to have his music being prepared. So I think we should go beyond words and really see what is going on in a humane, really humane information society.
Yeah, they're trying to force a lot of those artists to join an artist union, so that when they do the performance, the people who are taping that performance do not have the rights to share that performance unless they've paid a copyright fee to the
You need a
the artist.
worldwide union then, because if it's just the American or just the British union, doesn't apply in other countries unless they have an agreement, inter-country agreement.
Everything needs to be global.
You know, well, I don't know
Nationalism,
that.
nationalism needs to be crushed because nationalism is leading us off the cliff.
And selfism has to be crushed.
Yeah, once we get rid of nationalism, we'll have a better opportunity to move some of those dollars that are spent on arms and rockets and missiles in the mad rush to annihilate the whole planet with nuclear war. That money can be spent to help alleviate the suffering and reduce the carbon footprint.
What is selfism?
That's if you take globalism and nationalism and localism and neighborhoodism and familyism, it gets down to selfism, as the individual is the sovereign and nothing else has any influence on what the individual does.
Doug won't be very happy to hear about that.
He's into collaboration.
He's into the we are all in, or none of us are in.
He's his own God.
That's different. That's about who's in charge of becoming your future self.
I think that the collective and the individual come into, ethical dilemmas there, as you know, talking about dilemmas versus dichotomies.
Yeah, you got to make a decision.
I mean, if you want to collaborate with somebody, you have to come to mutually agreeable terms of engagement. Otherwise, you're not really doing collaboration. You're doing collaboration. You're collaborating with each other instead of collaborating with each other.
You've got to be compatible.
Well, this would be interesting where we could hook this over, like I think with collective intelligence, so that we know each other better and our sliders, right? When we come across these things, we capture them. We actually ask the person, Doug, what do you think of what we were saying here? We could clip out the last minute and send it to Doug, and our answer could already be here by the end of the show.
Oh, he's probably listening.
Or by the end of the month, but it won't be by the end of 3 years.
No.
And it's that memory we're missing. And that's another thing that I resonate with Sam.
What GCC is missing mainly is, for reasons unbeknownst to me, and I was not here at the beginning, GCC does not have a social contract. It's a collection, it's an accidental community that doesn't, it's not an intentional community. It's not a community of commitment. It's an accidental community and it doesn't have a social contract.
Has it got a mission statement?
I've asked that, and I think Sam and maybe Tammy might have written one or had a concept of one 3 years ago. But if you go to the webpage, I don't think you see GCC, here's our vision statement, here's our mission statement, here's a concise summary of our social contract. I don't think you see that on the GCC.
Well, it's changed. It is, but what we said last year might not be the same thing that's happening this year. Although I think Sam has said, if you look at, and I'm trying to gather these gems, and I have one for Sam, and he does say what he's about and what he started with, how it progressed, and now that he's into collective intelligence. And so he's also a big supporter of having memory, dynamic knowledge repositories. But I'm also saying that we don't have one foundation here, one barn that we're raising. We got several, and maybe we will go burn a few barns when we realize that they're infected with some kind of a disease, right? So it's not a dichotomy. There's a reason why you get rid of bad ideas. And everybody's allowed to have whatever ideas they want. So you're willing to change your bad ones. Is it a personal thing? And if it's a personal thing, well, why bother with it here, so to speak? So you got to be careful with what sliders you're trying to evoke in a people adapter, because some of them are not relevant and can actually be intrusive. But I think where I've had some difficulty explaining this in the past is that this isn't a tool that you go in and try to label somebody else. This is, you go in and you say, this is where we have difficult spots in conversation. Can we avoid them? Can we know ahead of time? Can we stick to the premise?
Expired. Heiner Baking is recognized.
Yep. Thank you. This is my parliament way. Order, order, order.
I love that.
This is how they do it in London. No, you mentioned Tammy and Sam, and this is a discussion very, very old. And I always say, ohne Zusammenhang kein Zusammenhalt. Without a common, coherent task, vision, duty, object, you cannot stay together, you fall apart. And you see, we had with the New Civilization Network, with Fleming Funch, this coherent group. And it was just by surprise it happened that there was a call from this foundation to follow the GC Foundation call to get some money, that we all came together. And I found it very good. And that's why I'm still staying here. We, like a vacuum cleaner, getting a lot of interesting people through Facebook. And then they go into subgroups. And these main groups on the various day, they follow very arbitrary roles or functions, and very often that is shifting. And I think we should be aware of that. And we tried with a scaffolding or a matrix to see where our common interests are, to really see where is the broader picture, the panning, and where is the detail, the zooming, and then be constructive about it. And not always stay on the surface and moan that we cannot dive or swim.
Right. So did you see the gem I put out on you, Heiner? Is that something that you would want better? Or, because I know you've done several interviews and different things, but I'm trying to find the pieces I can put together of what you say here at the GCC that you would like everybody to know. For example, what is your vision of the GCC? And you kind of just said it in a way of how it came together, but what is your vision of what you would like to see the GCC do? If I was about to clip it out in a 2-minute thing, do you have that prepared?
No, and my mind is presently somewhere else. But I think it is a good chance that we have a few people who are here for a long time and even newcomers to really put that together in a collaborative document.
The chair recognizes Alex Reed.
It's called foundation laying. And if we have co-creators creating web pages and linking them together, we'll have something happening. I mean, the agreement between you and 2 other friends is all you need to spark the growth cycle, and the chain of events will then explode. But, getting people to realize that is not an easy task.
Do you have an agreement with Sam on something, or is this local with people local?
It's with you 2 friends. I have an agreement with my neighbor in the same block here. And there's another guy who I'm planning to invite. But this is because it works best if it's localized in the environment where the person lives. These are real people nodes. They're not computer bots or pages generated by the AI. They're real people who know each other physically, and then they create their page and link it with the other 2 people.
Do you mind me asking you questions about this, or would the other people like to take it somewhere else?
It's what we end up with as a triad. It's called barn raising foundation laying, and that's why we're at this session now. So taking it somewhere else wouldn't be a good idea.
No, I didn't say taking it somewhere else. I said it was my leading question for you.
If they agree, yes.
Yeah, I'm asking you
If
it's okay if I ask you more questions, and if everybody wants to hear what I have to ask you about your web pages thing, because this is, this is your project and you talked about it a lot, and
I've given it away, Colin. I didn't keep it.
Oh, okay.
It's up to the people who have heard about it to create a page. They're called
That sounds a lot like mine.
They're called
sounds
collaborators.
A lot like my idea.
You know what a collaborator is? Do you know what a co-creator is? A co-visionary.
Yeah, I'm just
person
seeing
who-
how it relates to this fact of, you building a web page. So I was
Well,
asking you if you built
no,
a web page and
not
Sam
me,
built
not
one.
no. Other people hear what I say and they decide whether or not they're going to do it.
Do what? Build
Create a web
page?
page, and give it a link to Links Plus. Make sure it's linked to the other two people in their local area, so that they have a triad.
Right.
Are you providing the server, Alex?
You use any platform that provides free hosting, like Squarespace, WordSpace, Zoom, Wix. You know
Does
what I mean?
everybody have an individual account, or do you have one
No,
community?
no. When you have a page on the internet, you can't do it without an account with the web hosting provider.
Right.
So any web hosting provider, and there's hundreds of them out there, will give you an account and let you make a free web page.
So it's one account per contributor, not one account per community. Is that correct? It's not a community
Well,
account, it's individual accounts of
Yeah,
every individual.
you want to put a web page on the internet, you've got to have an account.
Well, unless you're like me and you own your own server. My
Well,
server's
yeah.
sitting right next to me here in the
Yeah.
same house that's running the
Yeah.
computer that I'm talking to you.
Yeah, but all you need is a service that provides you with the security that having a page on the internet is necessary. If you haven't got that security HTTPS, then the other platforms won't recognize you, and they won't allow you to put links up, or they'll allow you to put links up, but they won't let visitors click them without giving them a warning.
You do have a point.
This is an insecure
You got a good
site,
point.
not a secure site to visit.
The secure HTTP means that eavesdroppers can't listen to your connection. That's the only thing it means, is that eavesdroppers in the intermediate can't tap into it. 'Cause
Well,
it's
they can,
encrypted. That's all it means, it's encrypted.
yeah, and put a page in there with bad links on it.
Yeah. I don't bother to
Like-
encrypt mine because everything's public on mine. There's nothing to encrypt. It's
Yeah.
like reading a magazine or reading a billboard. It's all public. It's like a billboard. It's just something that anybody can read, and there's nothing.
That's the
individual.
trouble.
I think Alex has got a point, because things can be sabotaged and there's backup involved. And I have a virtual server and I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. Just my code.
Yeah.
Right. So
You put
Anyway.
you put up.
it depends
You
what
put
you're
link-
using it for. If it's just a blog, then, if people find a way to get in there and delete your stuff, if you have a backup, you can put it back up again. But if you're serving a bunch of people and there's private rooms and things, then you don't. And I think the internet standards are kind of pushing and forcing towards HTTPS. Some things won't work well anymore without it.
Yeah,
But I'm not right up on that, but yeah, I know Google was, especially if it has anything to do with business.
Anyway, it's a technical issue, and I've got it solved on my end. I don't have to
That's-
worry about it because it's a billboard. Nobody
That's
can.
why
It's just a billboard.
That's why I use a hosting service.
Yeah, is
The
that
ho-
what we want? Is
all
that what
the
you're
res-
looking for, Alex? A billboard?
That's
Sorry?
why I use a hosting service, because they take care of all those issues.
So
Perfect.
that's a good point. That's a good point. Is it a billboard kind of a thing? You're looking to build the web page so other people can come to your site and see your billboard of
Like a
what you're
blog,
interested in?
except it's a blog before they had blogs. It's what I
It's a
wrote
triad.
before we had blogs. That's all.
It's a links plus triad page.
Google
don't wanna-
Blogger came around around 2000 or 2005. Everything I wrote before Google Blogger is hosted on my own site. It's like a blog, except it's not Google Blogger. It's just another server.
Sure. But do you mind we focus in on Alex's point about how this billboard, like I'm trying to do a use case with Alex, right? Like
It's triad.
I've tried this a few
The
times.
Barry,
And
the
maybe
Barry
somebody else
Coit-
wants to talk about something else.
the Barry Coit blog post triad page, or the Barry Coit Facebook triad page, would be linked to two people he knows. And the agreement he has with those two people is that they will also find two people and co-create a web page as part of their collaboration effort. That's how
Right.
that's how it works. That's the growth factor in the DNA that makes it expand exponentially in the 2 times 2 multiplication.
Anybody can link to my pages. If, for example, Baby Wunderman wants to write an article on her blog that borrows content from my blog, She knows, she doesn't even have to ask me. She knows that if I wrote a post on Blogger and she finds a content in there that connects what she writes, she can copy a paragraph or two or put a link in and then put her commentary after that. She does that she's been doing that for a year and a half. I didn't even know she was doing it until quite recently.
I was talking to a marketing expert about getting your stuff seen by a larger audience, and he mentioned the fact that if the search engines are finding links to your website on other people's websites, it'll increase its chance of being found in search results.
That's right. That's right.
So if you have a Links Plus page, if I put your link to your blog on my Links Plus page,
right, and
you put my link on your web Links Plus page,
right,
it's all helping the AI learn.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
helping the algorithm. It gathers that information up and it says, okay, there's more links here. Count them, and it's counting them. We're teaching the AI. We're training the AI. But not many of us are doing it, so the AI is realizing that too.
Yeah. The downside of that is that groups of hackers can do Google bombing. You know about Google bombing? They'll make a keyword like, well, take a keyword like idiot, and a whole bunch of people will link idiot to President Trump's webpage. And because a whole bunch of people have collaborated to do this, they will fool Google to putting that link to the president's webpage. They did this under George Bush, I think, is when they did it. So if you did a search for those keywords, the top one would be President Bush's webpage. That's called Google bombing. So there's an upside and a downside.
Yeah, well, it involves having the access to resources before you start doing that.
Yeah, they do it on Reddit or someplace where they form a group to come up with a hack like that. And these are famous examples.
How did they get the Robin Hood action happening?
That was similar, wasn't it? Was that on Reddit, or I don't remember where they did it, but
Wall Street hedge fund.
Yeah,
they took over a hedge fund and caused it to crash.
Right.
Do you mind if I direct us back to the use case with Alex, and because you're getting somewhere? So Alex is about building linked billboards so that a search engine can find those links and promote them. And if two people do you take over the links of the other person and add them to your webpage so the links become exponential? Or is it just the amount of people that have a link to 2 or 3 people that are exponential?
Can you see the chat on the right hand side?
No.
Is anyone can see the chat? It's got posts there from Barry and posts from me. There's a link there from me and a link from Barry.
Did you understand my question?
Well,
like as you pick a web page,
I'm answering the question. The links are live, all right? You click on them, they'll take you to that.
No. I'm saying if you're using SEO, it's the link that's on the page. So say if you get 2 people, okay? So there's 3 of you. Say you, me, and Barry, okay?
Search engines will find them all.
So you, me, and Barry each have a web page, and we're pointing to each other. So I'll have 2 links, one to you, one to Barry, and so forth.
You'll have a favorite page, a link, a page.
Now Barry goes and finds another person to make an agreement with, or 2 more. Does he take our links from what he already has and add to them? So he has 1 page, and does that keep going like an MLM, or up the pyramid, so that it just keeps, or it's exponential is the word I'm looking for. It keeps going exponential.
Think of it this way. Think about it this way. Bitcoin is not like a structured top-down hierarchy, because it's distributed. So this is also distributed.
Yeah, but if the search engines only see,
the links are on your page. My links are on my page. Your links are on your page. It's distributed.
Right.
Do you understand?
You have 2 links on your page. I have 2 links on mine. Barry has 2 on his. Okay.
1. You don't need 2.
Well, he's got 1 to your page and 1 to mine.
I've got 15.
Okay, so that's the question I'm asking. So every time somebody else up the pyramid or up the exponential, their links get I don't think you do, but in order to have the search engines work in that way, you'd have to be
say that in English.
Picking up the new, you'd have to inherit the links from the new pages.
You don't, though. So for
No,
example,
you
let's say
wouldn't.
I go to Alex's page and I see that Alex is talking about topic C. And I've never looked at topic C, but he says a little bit about topic C and then adds a link to where he got deeper information. Oh, topic C, I've never heard of that. That's interesting. Let me follow Alex's link. Oh boy, this is really good stuff. I'm going to mention it on my site. But it's only stuff that he led me to that I was also interested in. If he's got topic D and says, I don't care about topic D, I'm never going to go to that site. I'm not going to mention it. I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
So I will find stuff that Alex brings to my attention, and then I will bring it back to my site, and maybe that causes other people to get the same thing brought to their attention. But it's only things that we have mutual interest in.
Yeah, like collaboration.
Exactly. I'm not interested in everything Alex is interested in, but maybe 2 or 3 things to say, oh, I'm interested in that too. Let me borrow some stuff I got from you and repeat it on my site. And then the people who are looking for that information will find comments on Alex's site and comments on my site.
The Great Awakening comments are interesting because they're the type of people who love linking with each other.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
sharing, they're sharing some kind of woo-woo news, you know. So
Right.
you
So if we keep following this
wouldn't
analogy,
attract-
Barry's got a good point.
So I'll give you an example, Colin. Suppose that on my site, I've got some stuff on systems theory and feedback control theory. And I've also got some stuff on
Yeah,
religion.
no, I don't give an example to Alex. I don't need the example.
All right,
Like I'm trying to get Alex to see the distinction, this distinction between promoting and having a contract with somebody. So he's
suppose
got
Alex,
both things involved.
suppose
so you
Alex
use
goes to
both.
my site and he sees I have some stuff on spirituality and I have some stuff on feedback control theory. And Alex says, oh, I'm interested in spirituality, but feedback control theory, you know, that's too technical. I'm not going to pay attention to that because that's beyond my interest. But Barry's got some stuff on spirituality. I think that's interesting to me. And Alex will link to that, but not the stuff on the, you know, PhD level feedback control theory, for example.
But you become part of his viral agreement network, because that's the point he's making. And he's just using a web page as a vehicle.
Right.
And I'm saying it might not be the right vehicle, because I don't think the links analogy plays out with his exponential idea.
Well, it's not exponential. I don't think it's geometric, but it's not exponential.
I can set up a server and host it all in one place, but you know that causes issues and problems that I was trying to avoid.
I mean,
I'd rather have it distributed.
I mean, just to give you an example, I had posted something on the GCC page on Facebook, and Baby saw it, and it linked to something on my blogger site, and Baby said, "Oh, this is really good stuff. You know, I'm going to borrow some of this stuff and put it on my site." And I said, "Absolutely, my guest." She found something on GCC that pointed to my site on a topic on spirituality, which she's interested in. So she says, "I want to bring this over to my site." She says, "This is very important stuff." Now, maybe she's the only person in the world who says, "Oh, this stuff that Barry writes on spirituality, you know,
That's
nobody
it.
else cares about it, but Baby does." Fabulous. That's all I cared about.
That's the way it grows. Real people sharing information.
At least you did it in your lifetime.
Oh, how you feeling?
I feel a
Very
lot better.
good.
Sorry, I had a stomachache last night, starting around midnight.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt whatever's going on here, but I feel like you guys might ask. So I think it was because it's strange because I actually had a really good day yesterday, but I hadn't taken my meds, and I take a lot of meds. So I actually took them all at once and probably didn't eat enough food with it.
Oh, that's a
And
problem.
then that's
Yeah,
why
and
I
also-
woke up this morning not feeling very good. And I still have to go eat something, but I feel a little bit better now. So anyway, sorry for the digression.
If you feel like, you know, resuming the chair, the host chair, just let me know.
Actually, the chair does not, need to be with any particular one. The host, by the way, the host is what I'm talking about. Because the only thing important about the host is they can mute people, they can record and stop record, and they can shut down the meeting. Other than that, the separate thing that I do is just moderation, and moderation can be independent of the host, FYI.
Yeah,
Right.
oh, that's good. That's good because I'm not designed to be a moderator. That's not my forte. By the way, the recording is being recorded on your hard drive. If I were to stop the recording and restart it, would then it go to my hard drive?
No, the recording, when you record, there's two options. You can record to the host's hard drive, or you can actually record to the cloud. And so right now, because I started it on my phone, I recorded it to the cloud. That's why I was able to leave.
Oh, I see.
Actually, no, I actually didn't leave. So actually that doesn't matter. But I could have left and the recording would have still gone if someone else was host. Just FYI.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that if you're not here or at the end, that I have to make sure that I stop it. Normally we stop.
You don't have to stop. When the host leaves and everybody else is gone, then the recording automatically stops. However, if the host leaves and the other person, they designate someone else as host, then it just continues.
Because I don't want to end up like we ended up with over 4 hours, and then you couldn't upload, or you could upload it, but you wouldn't get closed captions and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And losing the content, because you can't search the content if it's over 4 hours. And I don't want to go 4 hours today anyway.
Well, it would take an extra effort to get it, captioned or transcripted. So, I mean, I theoretically could do that at some point, or someone else could actually offer to do it, but I just haven't done it.
Yeah, you have part 2 of 2 from, I forget what date.
I remember, yeah, it was that time that Kayla blew a kiss one time, and then, someone actually said, did we get the kiss? Did we get the kiss? So.
Yeah, I was sort of looking for you to upload that one because there was a passage in it that people keep referring to, and there's no visual record of it.
Well, the reason for that one is that's not because it was over 4 hours. It's because I shared some stuff via screen share, and then I forgot to review it, whether or not there was sensitive stuff that was on the screen. So I just wanted to go back and have an opportunity to review that, or just cut that whole section out and then upload the rest. So I just haven't done that either. Okay.
So,
not because it's particularly sensitive to me, but because it might actually, raise other questions and it might be about someone else. So
yeah, I have very poor ability to remember what was said. I have to look at the videotape.
What did you say?
I can't rely on memory. It's not worth it.
What was that?
Damn on audio.
Oh, damn.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Were you guys on a particular flow or topic?
One thing that came up is, and this goes back to, does GCC have a vision statement, a mission statement, a goal statement, a social contract? Is there a formal document that defines GCC and that's agreed to by the founders, and all the newcomers are asked to review it and agree to it to become a member of the community?
Do you really want me to go there again?
Well, I would, because I don't have this nailed down in my own head as to whether GCC is a community of commitment or an accidental community.
It's up to Joshua to look it up on the website. I think he designed the web page.
Joshua's not here.
Okay, so let me just state this in 20 seconds, okay?
Okay.
In my view, there is. What I've been trying to do is to experiment with a notion of arbitrary, random people who may not have been there at the start to come and hear that, understand it, and align with it, and go with it. To date, the answer to that question has been no. But I do think that people are searching for focus / alignment / commitment / goal / whatever, charter, blah, blah, blah. So then the secondary experiment has it been possible for such a random group to actually co-create one, for it to be emergent? Again, the answer to that, until it becomes yes, is by default no. So I would still, from time to time, bring my perspective on it from the early RFP and just refloat that as an idea, because I'm here on a personal experiment to say, how can this be co-created if I choose not to exercise authority? If I just let the merits of the ideas that I emit stand for themselves, can that then find soil in other people's minds? Again, the answer to that seems to be no. So there's at least 3 different experiments going on. And the more there appears to be confusion, and the more people seem to be willing to live with that confusion rather than kind of like coalesce around certain agreements, then to me, it's less about me and it's more about just how people interact. I'm curious here on a 4th experiment is, am I here holding things back? Okay. Things that I'm doing, is it really, counterproductive to the emergent phenomenon that I'm seeking? So there's many, many, many ideas wrapped up in this. Okay. And the only commitment I've made, and I've made it only to myself, okay, is that I'm going to keep leaning into these questions and I'm not quitting. Anybody else can do whatever they want. And I'm completely open to that. And I agree with many people here. I disagree with certain people here. And I'm completely honest, open and honest about that. Okay. But I'm trying to do that in a way that's not violent and it's not, let's say, pushing people away. I'm trying to lean into those
Disparaging.
disagreements. What was that?
Exactly. Not disparaging.
I'm trying not to do that. Sometimes I lose my temper, okay, but hey, I'm human and sometimes I apologize for that, okay? So anyway, I'm trying to be pleasantly
I wasn't referring to you, Sam, just so that everybody knows out there. I wasn't referring to you specifically, but just in general, because that was a post that you put up. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a big problem.
You got different people with different rules, different
Exactly.
levels, different levels of moral aptitude.
Right.
And when other people overstep the line, they get annoyed. So that's obviously
Exactly.
a part of
And
the
I'm trying to
game.
see if we can tease that apart.
Well, you can, because you can unpack that when you're playing a game.
Theoretically,
but
yes.
Some players don't use the rules. Well, they're cheating. They can't play the game. They can't win. But if
Yeah, but sometimes imposition of rules is also cheating. So we have to tease
well,
that.
yeah, the rules have to be very carefully established.
And what I'm preferring to see is, can we co-create those, okay? Rather than I come and tell everybody, no, you cannot interrupt me, which I am in no position to do. I'm trying to see, hey, what does interruption create in its aftermath? And do we want it? People here seem to want it. Some people here seem to want it. But some people understand that when you interrupt someone, it actually is, in my view, along the scale or dimension of violence in saying, no, I'm not interested in hearing the rest of your statement. And that to me resembles a form of violence. It makes someone unsafe to speak up. And if you don't understand that, then you probably grew up in a very interesting household, because I've met people who cannot stop interrupting others, no matter how much I explain this notion. So I choose not to collaborate with those people.
It's caused by narcissism, the need to interrupt and to make your point, to interrupt somebody else's point and put your point across is caused by that narcissistic streak in your personality.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Anyway, so I'm not sure that was only 20 seconds, probably too long, but that was my immediate answer to your question, Barry, and others, if you guys had it. But I was curious to see, in my initial absence of the first, how long was I gone? Hour or so, whether or not that you guys had come onto any kind of a focus / direction, and whether there were stuff that was worth debriefing and recapping. Asked pointedly.
There's a point I make a...
Go ahead, Alex. I had something to say, but go ahead first, Alex.
I just want to make a point about the AI that is growing exponentially in intelligence, and it's noticing more bots. I guess it's understanding the difference between a human and a bot. I hope so. But the thing is, if our users in the community want to help the process and join the community of impact and be part of this community of impact, they really have to think about their collaboration efforts and the agreements that they're making with us. Over.
Go ahead, Sam, and then I'll
let me at least not take that as an assumption. Let me actually raise a question which has been bouncing around in my mind, okay? In some view, AI appears detrimental to the human species, because that's, implied in what you were saying, Alex, and forgive me if I'm reading this wrongly, but it seems like, oh, well, if AI does this, then we're not collaborating among ourselves. But there's another view that's possible, which is, if I were able to ask, and you call it an AI, if I was able to ask a bot to take my notes, to summarize my key points, to summarize Barry's key points from last hour or each of yours, to basically structure it in a graph or in a map, to basically, create a brain out of it, to basically, choose the right 30 seconds or 50 seconds or 2-minute, snippets out of it. And if I was able to interact with an AI bot that did that on my request, I don't mind collaborating with a bot. That doesn't seem bad to me. Now, can I ask any of you to do that? I can't, right? We don't have that kind of relationship. So I don't want to just immediately subscribe into this notion that AI is bad. There's much that it does for us. And I think that, there's another notion here, which is, closely related to that, which is advertising, okay? Or monetization. To me, advertising is a waste of time and money and effort and whatever, but it's a very pervasive model of how we interact with people, So let me just go further on, since you guys are letting me talk. If Amazon or this bot that I'm talking about knew me so well that if I say, hey, give me a toaster, it would know that I didn't want that particular toaster. It would know because of my lifestyle that I wanted this particular toaster. I don't need a 4-slot toaster. I just need a 2-slot toaster, right? So certain things about that. It may not, I may not want a toaster with lots of flowers on the side. I may want one that's sleek or gray or steel or whatever, okay? Because it doesn't have to ask me, and I therefore don't have to choose among 20,000 available toasters. It just knows based on knowing me what I want.
Do you know how that
I feel
progresses?
interrupted.
I've got my finger up. I was going to ask you if you know how that progresses. It ends up taking over, and you're not
It
making
could,
any decisions.
yes,
You're
but it
not
doesn't
running
have
your
to.
life. You've given away your life to some artificial thing, and you're not
Maybe,
doing anything. You're not
but
making decisions.
maybe I've saved several minutes from my life. Maybe I don't need to know about the 20,000 available options because I know that that one will work.
And you could be doing something else.
Exactly. My life is precious. And rather than, being bombarded daily by all this crap that I don't need, which sucks away many minutes of my day per day. Now, think of 10,000 days, 20,000 days, 30,000 days you have in your lifetime, whatever it is, okay? That amounts to something, right? I could be sleeping. I could be playing with my dog. I could be, cooking something with my daughter, rather being bombarded by, do I want that insurance plan? Or how about that insurance plan? And God, I have to read all this fine print, or I have to ask somebody, or, that's not going to work for me, but I chose it because its advertising was effective, all this other crap. So there are ways to think about why technology / bots can add to our lives. Obviously, I believe that because I am a party to creating some of these things, okay? And I know how they help in certain engagement scenarios, okay? By the way, there are, let me say this again. Every technology can be a double-edged sword. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. So it's up to the human or a group of humans behind it that kind of direct it. Or it's up to people who can sort of step up and beyond and sort of look at the implications of it, while the technical people are working on the implementation of it. Other people need to be looking about the ramifications and the implications and the ripple effects of it. Alex.
Go ahead, Alex.
The one people with the most money can build the biggest bots with the greatest artificial intelligence. They'll be in great demand.
Right. So inherently
by the marketers.
Right.
Sorry.
So that's I think again, and again, I'm very opinionated and I just came on board here, but there's inherently nothing really inherently evil about having a lot of resources. But if you choose to use them selfishly and non-compassionately and non-empathetically, and you siphon and suck all those resources away from co-creating a better community, then to me, that's anti-universe, that's anti-community, that's anti-symphony, that's anti-human, actually.
Yep, I agree.
So if I had all the power in the world, let's imagine that I was Plato's emperor king or philosopher king, whatever you called it, right? And I was, just saying, Alex, here's what you need. Here's your P2P network. Barry, here's what you need. I got to get you a brand new PC instead of those 20-year-old machines you got. Or Teach, I can get you a nice new classroom. Or, Kayla, I'm going to get you all this furniture for your new house. Or, you know me, I'm just simplifying this thing. But if I had all the resources in the world, I can make sure nobody was hungry, that everybody was fed, that everybody was warm, that every child was educated, that everybody had health care. Wait, I'm sounding like Bernie now. Sorry. No, sorry. No.
Yep.
But I'm
Yep,
saying
it
if
could.
that were the case, then what would be the problem with that other than maybe I'm going to die at some point and now you're worried about who's going to follow me, right? And you have to kind of trust that I'm going to continue being that way, okay? So there's a number of issues here. And I'm not just posing myself, but I just wasn't going to use anybody else's exemplary, So anyway, I'm just saying we have to be more careful about what goodness and badness are and not immediately take the traditional notion of, well, capitalism isn't working, so we have to just do immediately blah, blah, blah. I am a proponent of the fact that capitalism has hit a wall. But rather than just say that, let's dig underneath it. What really underneath it didn't happen? There weren't protections about human welfare or social welfare, It used to be the case that people had a sense of ethics and a sense of wrongness and rightness and a sense of compassion for each other. If you look at politics today, that's so rare, especially in people that sit in the Senate. That is a problem. Maybe it's a secondary or tertiary effect that the way politics and capitalism is set up, it attracts those people. People with psychopathic and sociopathic tendencies seem to succeed in our system. That is a problem.
Yep.
So we do have to, refine something, but, we can't just live with 5 second, 6 second, 20-second blurbs and think that we're going to, solve society's problems, And right now, very few people are willing to or able to connect and look more deeply. Actually, maybe they are. I just haven't found them. And maybe they already have solutions, but, they're just trying to get
There's a
along.
lot.
I don't know.
I've been adding links to my Links Plus group because there's a lot of people thinking along the same lines about when are the people going to realize that they have power and unity, and that if they join their web pages together with links, the AI will realize they've got that unity. The politicians will be able to see how many of us there are who want change. 85% of us, 90% of us want an end to war and the missile money spent on food for programs for
Okay, that
Ethiopia. Over.
Is it my turn or Sam has still?
go ahead. I've been speaking a lot. I'll hold off for now.
I just wanted to go back to sort of the original starting point of this, which is Sam's notion that if you start with an accidental community, just people that happenstantially come together, can it organically emerge into something more than merely an accidental community? And if you go back to the work of George Poore and people like those who have talked about different classes of communities, they have a sequence. And the way I model their sequence is you start with an accidental community. You all live in the same neighborhood, but you didn't know each other when you bought your house. So that's an accidental community. You live in the same town or the same part of town. And then what we found on the internet is something called a community of interest. So I have an interest in cars or boats or you name it, skiing. And so I find that there is a group of people who are interested in skiing. And they're talking about, where's a good place to go skiing and what kind of equipment you should buy. That's called a community of interest. So the next thing up is a community of interest where people are brought together because of common interest in some narrow thing like movies or whatever. The next thing up from a community of interest is a community of practice. Not only do they have an interest in something, but they are also practitioners. Say they're sewing dresses or making crafts or something. And they want to find other people who are not only interested in that, but actually practitioner, and they want to learn from each other how to become better practitioners in some common practice, like a hobby. So that's community practice. The next one up is really, I think, where Sam is going, what's called a community of commitment. These are people who are not just individually practicing the same thing that somebody else, like how to fix my car, they want to collaborate to do something jointly. And so a community of commitment, you say, okay, what is our vision? What is our mission? What is our goal? And how are we going to interact with each other so we can work collectively, collaboratively, peaceably, constructively? So that's a community of commitment. And at that point, people don't just come and go because they've gained or lost interest or they're stopped doing the practice. They say, we now want to form an authentic community where we're all engaged with each other in a way that makes a community. And they make a promise. This is a covenant community or a social contract community that says, let's agree on some charter document that states our vision, our mission, our goals, our ideas, how we're going to relate to each other. And they write this down and they all sign on. They all promise to abide by this mutually agreeable terms of engagement. That's a community of commitment. And so entry to that becomes, I agree with the terms of engagement and I promise on my honor to abide by the terms that we've all agreed to. I'm not sneaking in, as an adversary or somebody who's going to try to wreck it. I'm on my honor, I'm coming in to participate in the things we've all agreed to. And if you have a community of commitment and they make some real progress, they can become a center of excellence. A center of excellence. Now, I don't think GCC is going to get to center of excellence because we haven't gotten to a community of commitment yet. We're not even a community of practice. I mean, Sam has a practice, Gertrude has a practice, Doug has a practice, I have a practice, Alex has, but we have different practices. We're not doing the same practice. They're overlapping like a Venn diagram, but they're not exactly 100% or 99% overlapped. If we want to become a community of commitment, we're going to need a social contract that lays out vision statement, mission statement, goal statement, terms of engagement. And then people will say, I'm signing on to that on my honor. And then maybe we could become a center of excellence. But right now we're halfway between an accidental community and a community of diverse interests. I'll stop here. Go ahead, Alex.
Collaboration of foundation layers, foundation stone creators.
To what end?
We're a community of people who are interested in collaborology.
Yep. Okay. To collaborate to do what?
Nothing changes unless something changes. And the only thing that changes a politician's mind is, are they going to win the election or lose it? Are they going to get enough votes or not? So they look at the number of people in these interest groups and think, which way do they vote? So they know 80% of the people vote for a cleaner environment. And if we can collaborate to join the link, join the dots, we're weaving a network to show them how many of us there are.
Are we going to collaborate to try to get
Colin's
money?
hand has been up for quite a while, as Tees points out.
Colin.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I've said, I think I'm repeating myself. I think that's the trend. And I appreciate Barry laying out that analogy of commitment and agreement as a goal to actually have a chance to become excellent at something as a group. And it would be interesting to take that and snip that and have each person answer whether they agree with that. Now, co-visioning is kind of why I'm here. Coexistence, dynamic memory repositories. And, I think I've been part of organizations that are reaching, standards of excellence in developing within a group. But usually you get paid to do that, not something that you come together. GitHub, open source software, that's a passion where I think that's the model that I feel that seems to work. But different contexts, that's software. Different contexts, you might need different kinds of bonding with the mission, be it in, somebody's working part of a medical team, doing volunteer stuff across the world. COVID volunteers, you know. So the thing is, the Venn diagram is very important. And what is the we? And I think that question is the one I've been kind of pointing to for a few months now. And Sam has suggested that we can do RFCs, requests for comments, because if you put an RFC in and nobody bothers to comment on it, then we may be able to adopt it. We haven't really tried it yet. I've put a few in, some about video, optimizations and management that would be GCC we stuff. Josh has commented on that. And I've also put in one about, you know, the space itself. In order for it to be inviting for everybody, it has to follow a non-discriminating view. And to me, that means a secular space. So I say non-discriminating before I say secular because of the cognitive bias load that the word secular holds. So I've had problem trying to explain that. I've had problems trying to explain in my Venn diagram of the GCC that this is a show, because I think people do not only come here to meet, but some people come here to, you know, speak to a larger audience. I don't really feel that way all the time, or feel like I need to do a deep dive, or it's about me, but it's about this co-visioning, coexisting, and how do we agree or disagree better. That's very important to me, and that's been important to Stacy. And you know, there's plenty of opportunity here and on Facebook to try, you know, models that may work. So that's kind of the experimenting that's going on for me, and it's coming from, as in Sam, different levels of what this group is, different kinds of experiments. But I find that if people here lean in and commit in some way, like open source software, to see what it does mean to co-vision and to try to, I think that some of the mantras are to do things differently, to do us better, you know, those kinds of things. And depending on the individual who comes, they bring, you know, something. So how do we add them to the Venn diagram? So it's like a map of the town square where, well, if you talk to that guy over there, he's into this, and this guy's into sacred geometry, and those guys over there know more math than you'll ever want to know. You know, just and you know, link to their main projects and things like that. That's what I've been kind of, and that's why profiles have been important. And I think getting people's words and putting them into gems. I never feel ready, and I don't look to gemify myself, which is kind of strange, but that's because it is a bit of an experiment, and I don't want to control it. So when I did start building a map, and I did start wanting people to collaborate, and it was quite a lot of interest, and there was technical problems, there was user ability problems, there was there's just all kinds of issues around the map. Just navigating the map was difficult. So since it wasn't co-created together, it just became more and more stuff you didn't recognize, and stuff that I didn't have validated. So stuff that I don't want to publish, right? Did I get that right? Did the transcript get it right? You know, so how do we follow up on these thought trails was kind of the idea, or these conversations. And we've had a bunch of them today. So, you know, you're doing something really weird, Barry.
I'm doing an exercise that Gertrude taught us a week or two.
Okay. Well, just knowing you, I have an adapter that when you do certain movements, it might actually mean something. So
It's just an oxytocin generation process that I learned.
Anyway, I'm pretty well done. Kayla just entered the waiting room. I don't know what that means. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so that's the idea of this Venn diagram. And you know, here's a question for a test of the space. Should I be trying to talk with Alex about his idea here, or should I meet Alex here and talk about his idea in some kind of a project development space where it actually makes sense to have progression? So is it just a repeated thing that happens over and over again, and I ask the same questions? Or is it something that we can actually find a way not to repeat the same stuff and get onto better ideas and leave ideas that don't really work behind? Like, is there any opportunity to help each other with that? That's kind of the thing. So should I be talking with Alex about that here? Does everybody consent? That's a good use of our time. How many times does somebody bring up their project with no real understanding? Do you just, you know, which you know, a lot of our projects might not be understood. So how do we make best use of our time? And that's the kind of thing I'm coming up with, the focusing. So I'll just let it go there. I know Sam talked a lot. I'm talking a lot, but
Sam's got his hand up now.
yeah, go ahead. I can't see. Very good.
Okay, thank you. There's maybe 3 or 4 topics that I heard that I'd like to add my perspective to, or at least ask a question. And that is part of what I'm constantly leaning into myself about is to ask myself, am I exhibiting the problem? In other words, you've heard the saying, those who can do, those who can't either teach or research or whatever it is, okay? Now, just a little bit about myself, and without too much hubris, I do know how to engage in the software discipline. I've built teams, I've co-founded companies, I've actually, you know, been key architect on a number of things which I believe are still deployed around the world. The problem is that those are all very, as Doug would call them, old model, okay? So I've intentionally decided not to practice those things in order to see if there's room for something else to emerge. So I will admit that, therefore, I may be contributing to the problem. I do think that had I taken the authority to say, here's a stack of RFCs, I want everybody to, you know, either review them or agree, and oh, by the way, here's a rule about not interrupting, or by the way, here's the charter for the original thing that Tammy and I created, or by the way, here's the website we're going to use. You know, had I done that, it would not have been the experiment that I really wanted. I've really been trying to figure out, can we do this without a central figure? Can we not make it personality driven? I'm close to answering that with a no, but I'm still open to that experiment, okay? So that's idea number 1. Idea number 2 is, I think it was someone who said, can't we like imply that 80% of the world wants peace instead of war? It would be curious to actually do that study, but I do think that that raises a very good point. I do believe that most people don't want to fight. Most people don't want to risk their lives, particularly for causes that don't themselves, you know, they benefit from, but it's actually, you know, benefiting, you know, billionaires and industrial complexes, you know. So I'm pretty clear that most people don't want to have constant conflict and, you know, raping and pillaging and, you know, of the world, at least, if not of people. So the question is, do we have a world in which those desires can drive society? And the answer to that appears to be not yet. Those with power still get a lot of money from making people sick, from making people fight, from making people hungry, from making people homeless, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there is a very good question there. And I think all of us need to ask, you know, what part of society keeps enabling that and keeps empowering that, rather than the quote unquote goodnesses that, you know, most of us seem to be subscribing to. That's idea number 2. Idea number 3 was Barry's notion of interests and practice and commitments and etc. It is my view that everybody here is completely welcome and encouraged to figure out, you know, who else among here you resonate with, and to say, hey, I'd like to do this, or I'd love to support you, or I think you can help me over here. I think that's, you know, one of the huge benefits of being in these communities, because while it is too much to say, oh, we are going to co-create something that involves all of us, it is very, very appropriate for each of us to say, oh, I found one other person that I can collaborate with, and start there. So to me, that's one of the huge things that's possible. I mean, that's why Tammy and I have created a lot of videos together, and I've done one-on-ones even with you, Alex, and I've done it with others here. So the question that's here in this group, though, is how do we scale this successful collaboration? That's my interest, okay? And I've expressed my interest. I'm not saying this is the interest of everyone, but my interest is not in this group, not just to find one person to collaborate with and go away. What I'm trying to figure out is how can we do this and examine that process so that it can succeed beyond 2 people, beyond 3 people, beyond 4 people, beyond 5 people, and see it scale successfully. What do each of those new additions raise as challenges or opportunities that we can navigate well versus not? If we go from 1 to 10,000, now all of a sudden, due to my capacity, I'm probably not knowing all other 9,999 well. Whereas if I'm collaborating with one, I probably know that person really well. So that introduces different dynamics and practices and commitments and understanding and trust and et cetera, okay? So those are questions I'm interested in. And that's why I call this foundation laying. That's idea number 3 or 4. Let me introduce another one that I think Colin brought up, which is GitHub. In my opinion, and I admit I'm biased, okay? But in my opinion, having looked at teams, businesses, startups, politics, nonprofits, software teams, etc., in my opinion, software teams have the most sophisticated collaboration model I have ever seen, down to the bit. They track things so carefully with such careful understanding of who's doing what and what change happened where and what the implications are, and all of it is testable. In other words, if it doesn't work, it's backed out. Where else do you see that kind of detail to collaboration? If I say something that pisses Alex off, okay, that doesn't get noted anywhere in some kind of a GitHub for collaboration, right? So I could just be running roughshod over Alex or Barry or Colin or whatever, and it's detectable to no one unless people take the time to look at this video. Whereas in GitHub, it is so transparent that if I introduce a bug, it is immediately detected because there are tests that run automatically. Or people could say, oh, you didn't follow this particular convention, so I'm going to back this out and redo the change, and I'm going to reinsert it over here. In my opinion, we could benefit from that model of collaboration. Now, to many who are unaccustomed to it, it looks too technical. It looks too detail-oriented. It looks too technology-focused. And I submit that you're not appreciating the degree to which collaboration happens in that model. And GitHub is extremely scalable. Linux has thousands of contributors. Not all of them know each other. Big projects, like the free Office programs, or the system utilities, or you're probably not all geeks enough to understand System D and all this other crap. But those are big projects. And most of that collaboration is remote. In fact, they probably don't even use their real names. But yet useful stuff comes out of that effort. And it scales. And by the way, it's a product of the open source philosophy, which is anybody can contribute on the merits of the contribution. We don't know if any of those people are psychopaths. We don't know if any of those people, have backyards full of ducks that they care for because those ducks were, abandoned. We don't know anything about those people. All we know is on that particular project, their contribution was aligned with the interests of the project, and it was accepted by the standards that have co-evolved. So I do think that there are different levels of collaboration skill and capacity. I think GitHub is pretty close to brown belt, if not actually black belt or beyond. But most people don't even understand the value that GitHub represents and the degree to which it can actually scale. And I do believe it only scales because it can do the most minute contribution tracking. That's how you scale. And that's why, in my opinion, when I'm talking about something like the community of impact, I'm not here trying to say, hey, you got to do this, let's do a charter. No, I'm trying to figure out at what atomic level Can I personally make agreements with myself and change the way that I do things? Change my collaboration genetics, change my collaboration DNA, so that now that can plug in with others who are practicing the same thing. That's why I've thought of the COI the way I do. It's not a charter, it's a personal commitment. So that is kind of idea number 3 or 4. And then, along with it, I'll just wrap up with a small minor idea. The RFCs, okay. Yes, I have created probably over a dozen of them. And I think what's missing right now is a shared understanding, a shared index of where they are and where they can be shared, okay? So not saying it needs to be that way, but I will send a link to the Google Drive folder that has all of my RFCs. And I believe it is world writable, so anybody can actually write into it. Anybody is invited to comment or revise those RFCs. I just ask that you turn on tracking so that we know who does what. But I do think that the RFCs are a very good model. And by the way, the RFCs are the way the internet grew. There are no contracts really on the internet. There are agreements. And as agreements get outmoded and clearly understood to need refinement, new RFCs come and replace the old RFCs. And there's nobody on there that's really, saying, hey, you violated that, I'm going to put you in jail. It has been really interesting to see the whole internet community come about. How many of you know what the IANA is?
Yep.
Probably at least 2 of you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
The name
Who gave them the authority, right? They just did what had to be done. Cisco could go and say, hey, I'm going to just completely redo the internet because, most of the internet is on Cisco routers or whatever, okay? They could have done that. China could have done that. In fact, China probably did it within their own Great Firewall. So I'm just saying there are scalable collaboration models out there. So there are existence proofs. I'm trying to see whether we can actually bring them to collaboration and co-emergence and co-visioning and coexistence. And I know it's possible. I just want to know whether or not we can co-create it. Over.
Alex has his hand up.
Barry's got a web server we can make use of, but that's if you want to have a top-down hierarchy. If you want a distributed network on a weaving basis, network weaving, then you need multiple servers.
I have a very little used ELG server. I don't know if you even heard of it, ELGG. It's a social network suite that's free. And it's running on a machine that I installed I think a decade ago. I also have WordPress running on it. Nobody's using it except me and a few other people occasionally for rehearsals of projects, but it exists. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, this is triggering me. Let's not decide to go down the rat hole of let's put everything over there. That's just, the rat hole conversation that just leads to nothing. I just encourage each one of us, stand up what you think is necessary. Okay? And let's use that as a starting point. Let's create the content first before we figure out where to put it together, okay? But deciding on a central place without creating the content first, that's been tried. Create the content, make it findable, make it linkable, is my encouragement. And then if people say, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this were all over there with that? Or let's put those 3 things over there with those 8 things and whatever, okay? Let's make it easier for us all. But having those to work with and compose together is better than saying, okay, there's nothing there, but let's create the box first. Because then you're saying, oh, geez, I got a better box than you've got, and Josh has a better box, and Mary's got a better box, but there's nothing to put in it. Sorry. That does trigger me because we've had these conversations many times. Over.
Colin can speak. Hans was up.
Thanks, Tice. I'm trying not to interrupt unless I find it active listening. because especially Sam, because I know it's one of his triggers on the people adapter or conversation adapter. So anyway, I really like the way Sam brought up the last point about we've had this conversation before. And how can we remember we've had that conversation before for the guy that shows up next week? I guess is the question. And also, so to know where what things we've tried and what things haven't worked, because as Sam said, I too could be more assertive in ways that we could proceed with software type methodologies. And every time it comes up, I get excited. Keep going, Sam, keep going. Because I do find it is a really clean model of what's going on, what's happening next, and how do we know when we're done. So I've been trying to see ways of finding what the we is in helping the collective intelligence beyond building and holding the space. And since I've been here, Alex has had an idea about going exponential. So I was doing it again today when I can't remember his name. The guy was here talking about root problems and symptoms of and analysis.
Eugen.
I think Eugen, yes, the German fellow. Thank you, Barry. I said, well, can we use Alex's seemingly simple model as an example of something to see how we could maybe use that as part of our time if we agreed to use that project as one we all are going to help, like say for a week or a month or something, and see how that progresses, and maybe use some of our tools that, if Barry wants to use his server for something, if I want to use, the tools I use, as we become familiar with what works, you might learn some other tools, but that's going to always be a problem, servers and tools. But looking at the actual thing that Alex is trying to do, and today I was trying to differentiate between the idea of distribution or SEO or AI with the concept of, I think, what he's trying to do, who the target market is, and potentially I see it as a voting application. You just need a button and, the 5 binary code that says what you're voting for, and you push the button and they all IoT coagulate, and now you've just voted and the government knows how you feel. Like, voting is, I think, what I hear Alex talking about in the end being heard. And as far as project space goes, well, if that's a project, how do we actually look at that? Or do we continue to have, as Sam pointed out with the servers, the same input from Alex over and over again about all you need is a web page, and I have a web page, and because that comes up quite routinely, and I can we follow that idea through, or is that something we don't want to do here? We're in the town square, and it's like, look, you'd have to come over to my office, and I'd have to boot up my computer, and then we'd start to work. So is this the space to, that's the kind of the Venn diagram. And I see, Sam, if you can correct me, Sam, that we're leaning towards, town square model in my mind here. And then you align with people, as Barry was mentioning, and as my journey map mentions, as you get experience and move up to upper levels of collaboration, you kind of move outside of this space. And I see the space as when we come back and update each other. So, we talk about good tools and methods and what works, and, people come here like Michael Jewesifitz, and he would tell us all about his progress. And, we were looking at using Raspberry Pis, and it ended up that smart TVs was much, much more efficient, cost-effective, bang for everything he needed. And so, my idea became, well, if anybody wants to get interested in programming with Python or something quick, you want to set up a corner, some kind of an education thing with, I'm still willing to follow up on the Raspberry Pi idea. But at that point, having a cheap computer was not something that seemed to be that Michael wanted. He wanted to move more into the educational type of PowerPoint presentation type of stuff. So I was thinking, maker labs and hackathons, and he was thinking general education.
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding right now.
Me too. so, so yeah, it's this Venn diagram, I think, that we can all lean into. And that would be my proposal. Can we make a Venn diagram and pick a couple of projects to show how we can use tools to enhance that person's thing as a we? Or is there a we here other than administrative? Is that clear? So the question is, Sam, should I spend my time trying to help Alex in this forum, or should I contact him outside this forum if I wanted to align with him? And the things that you've already told him, and showed him when you first met, how do we have that available for him? And we can just point him in that direction. Or is Alex speaking to the wider audience so we listen to it every time he brings it up with no further input? You know, those are kind of different nuanced ways of adapting to Alex's participation here. And it's a simple enough model that I think we can, you know, use it as an example. And, you know, my journey map is a simple example too. It doesn't need to have, you know, academic mathematics sliders. It just needs to have a guide towards what you want to be, have a mental model of, and, you know, get you away from dichotomy land. Thanks, Sam.
I got a link to Barry with my website. He read up on how it works on that, and we didn't have to go on a one-on-one and have a discussion about it because it's all on the web. It's all there for you to read. It's like I put it up there and now it's out of my hands. I'm an observer watching to see who joins, to see who agrees with it, and to see who contacts me and says, hey, there's an error. Over.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Alex. Colin, in answer to your question, my perspective is, and this is why I still like the town square idea, okay? Call it the meadow, you know, if you prefer to be more nature oriented. But the whole idea is, if we are in a town square that we don't control, right? The old town controls it. And if I and you say, wow, you know, let's take the entire town square and let's build what we want. Now, that may not leave room for other people to build what they want, right? But we're in a big town, so we could actually go over to that corner of town and we could build it there. Or we could build a small version of it here and say, hey, don't you like it? Let's build a bigger one over there. So also the whole notion of a town square is we may get 2-year-olds, we may get dogs, we may get, you know, retirees, we may get all kinds of people, right? And it's all fine. You can talk about what you're doing. You can talk about what they're doing. You know, you can try and interest to the kids. You can try and, you know, play with the dogs, whatever. But the town square is for all to congregate, in my opinion. Okay. Whereas if you really build something, you probably get less interference and more room and creativity and independence and time if you actually take it like to the next block over. You know, buy a plot of land over there and, you know, build it over there, if you want to go along with that model. So that's why I think here it's an interesting place to cross seed ideas, for us to, you know, meet others, to interest others, to get interested in what they do. But if you really want to go into something that's, you know, very specific, very project oriented, until we have large scalable agreement, until we assume that the entire town wants us to do this in the town square, okay, then I would encourage, you know, go off, buy a plot of land, you know, go off, you know, go to that, you know, park bench over there and, you know, start seeding it. That would be my alliance with the metaphor, my alignment with the metaphor, I mean. Over.
And I think that would align with Heiner's early topological map that he had, or just a basic campsite. And it was early HTML stuff. And it was just to visualize where things are, which is similar to the mind maps that I make, where I put things, you know, and, you know, I could put some time in going through those if I felt that was useful. So this thing is where, okay, so can we kind of do an RFC here, or is it worthwhile? Earlier I said, you know, should we consent to me asking Alex questions, which is what Sam just said, maybe not. So, you know, until we make agreements that we're, you know, it just came up as a topic because Alex brought it up again about, you know, all we need is to have web pages that we can link to. So I've just heard that Alex is no longer actively maintaining that project. It's now on self-propagation mode. So I'm not going to ask him about that, but maybe there's somebody else's project that we could take here as an example to, somebody's interest, like, and highlight it. And I think Sam's got several that can be highlighted, and he has tried before going through a lot of this stuff. So if somebody doesn't have something, a worthwhile project, then we keep, we basically kind of do stand up, meetings on how it's going with your project, if you have a project, because I think people in my mind are here to actually build something. I know I am. And part of it is, how do we foresee what we're going to say so that it means more because of what we've already said? How do we plan to be ready for what we're going to do? To know what we should do and what we have done, and how do we show other people that? And not get into these come to my server discussions or free association and thinking that the person is here just for community interest, which a lot of people could be, and that's a good thing. Some more than others. Like Doug's show is more about that than this show. But, Sam always starts off with, personal check-in. That's very much shows that what he's bringing to the table as far as personal involvement in the group here. So there is a group. What does it look like? That's my question. I don't really want to go any farther until that's a little bit clearer. And I think Barry's analyzed that too, that, it's kind of madness just running around, not knowing where you're going. So if we all had our plots, our gardens, and some gardens are for sale, and, when you go there, say, oh, he's not working on that anymore. So, not to, and when they bring it up, you can ask them, how's it going? Right. But if we do focus individually and as a group in a town square type of Venn diagram, I've used a building before too, like we're all in the lobby, right? And there's different conference rooms we can go into and do, work. And then there was experiments where people would go off and do dyads and triads. And then it was like, well, some people felt excluded because they didn't get to see what the other people were doing. And it's a whole lot of experimenting, but not really clarity and focus of what it is you're trying to convey. And that's all I'm trying to say, is how do we make our messages clear, be it gems or whatever, and how can you, and there's people here who do practice that, and Sam does, Barry does. They have all kinds of writings that they can send you to. Alex says he's got a website, but I don't really want to have something I'm sending you to, because I'm here to create things, not to actually give you the solution on my website. But the coggle maps, I guess, is something I brought, and I won't continue a whole bunch more, but it is about the memory and following what's next. And knowing what each person's interests are, and above and beyond that, because of conflicts, have a bit of an idea of the conversation that this person would best work with, how their style of collaboration, you could say, conversation adapter. And we also have a different one for the group conversation adapter. And that's why I feel that the group meetings here could be more effective and feel like they're less blocking at times, or, people know why they're here. Anyway, this is an infinite loop, so I'll stop here.
There's an issue that hasn't been neglected much, and that is that the progress of some of these projects is slow, and without organised hubs or organised GitHubs, software programmers and developers get their act together, they will remain slow if they have to be driven by popular demand, and but people are not finding the things we are creating. And so if we had a repository, knowledge repository that Colin talked about, well, so I say, where is it? Well, let's put it up on the net in on an open server.
Okay, I'm going to take some personal initiative, and I'm sorry I interrupted you, okay? But you just excited me, Alex, based on what you and Colin just said. I am going to create a GitHub repository and start moving some of my RFCs there. And anybody can join me there, and you can put your RFCs there if you like. That I will do an offer. And that is probably my checkout for today.
Does anybody have a project? If we thought that was a good RFC to pick somebody's project to, put in the incubator here, does anybody have a project they'd like to put forth that we could maybe
Yes.
consent to?
Most of us do. With a little thought, I think you can come up with a new project to put there if you don't have one already.
I would urge us to think small initially. Don't think so big about project. Think about what is it that you wish were adopted within GCC or even just within barn raising. Do you want to adopt the finger sign rule? Do you want to adopt the behavior list? Do you want to adopt taking notes? Do you want to adopt another practice like not mentioning people's names unless they're here? Whatever it is, because those are good places to start. Start specific, start small is my recommendation. If you start big, there's too much to comment on. It'll go on forever. But if something like, hey, let's adopt these 5 hand signals, I'm thinking that's probably not going to go on forever. Open.
Sam, because you made us co-hosts, I can see at the bottom the affordances of a professional version of Zoom, which I do not have. I have the free version. There is a hook for closed captions, but I don't know what it means to invoke that hook if you have to buy an expensive piece of proprietary software, or there's a reasonably usable version of closed captions that.
I've never seen it. How do I even turn it on? I've never even looked for it.
Well, I mean, you see at the bottom towards where it says breakout in closed caption?
No, it's just a breakout for me.
That's odd because between
Oh,
pause.
maybe that's because you're the host and I'm a co-host now, probably.
Well, how about if I make you the host and you can see what I'm talking about? I have to go to security. No, I have to go to participants. And then I have to go to.
I could probably reclaim host, but I haven't done so.
Let's see if I can figure out how to make you the host. Make host. Change host. Ah, now do you see it? Did I do the right version of you?
There is a closed caption thing here. Yeah, so let's. Oh, wait. Oh, yes. You have to either have someone agree to type, in which case it now appears, down below, or you have to have a third-party automatic bot that, we have to create an API token for. Actually, let me look into the API token. Okay, unless somebody wants to type, then we can create the API token.
Yeah, I mean, I type a lot, but the question is, are you familiar with APIs that are either reasonably inexpensive or free, not $1,000 a year versions that we could invoke here, if at all? I mean,
well, Zoom has an integration with Otter.ai. And I know that Josh has used them quite a bit. So that, I suspect, is what this third-party CC service refers to. But it may be open enough that something else could replace Otter.ai. That's why I say I'll look into it.
Well, it says API, which means any API that's available, not necessarily.
Yeah, but it has to be able to take an audio stream and have to come back in the right format. So
yeah, we
just have to figure out who does that.
So that's something to consider. Maybe Joshua would be the person who would be most knowledgeable about what's available.
Well, he uses Otter.ai, so I'm pretty sure he already has an integration with them.
If he's already got a subscription to it, maybe we can use it. I can ask him.
I'll look into it.
Good.
Good find. I wasn't aware of that before.
Oh, that hit me big when you made me the host. I go, oh my God, look at all this stuff I can do now that
because I've just automatically assumed that YouTube will automatically create the AI later on in the video. So that's just what I've been relying on.
Yeah, except for that stupid 4-hour issue.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's now 10, so I'm probably going to go eat something now. So you guys are free to continue. Okay.
Well, before you go, does anybody have any more agenda material we want to talk about, or is this just a time to end?
I have.
I want to end.
Okay.
You just said you want to. Say it again, Tis.
Can I talk?
See you, Tis. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm leaving also.
Okay.
So
Thanks
it's
for being.
long
Thanks.
enough and much sharing. So thank you. So and
Fine.
the chat must be
Save the chat before you leave.
saved. Yeah, so I don't save it, but someone has it. So I'll listen to Alex now and then I'll leave.
I just wanted to say that there's a slow pace in the development of some of these projects. It doesn't mean they're dead. It just means they're slow. So some of the things that are big on the internet took years to get going. We've got to figure that part. So we can put it in the wastebasket, but don't empty the wastebasket until next year. Over.
So, anything else before we sign off? Sam, I
No.
think it's gone, and I think everybody, just you and me, Alex. So if you have nothing more to save the chat if you want a copy of it, and thank you everybody for who's still here for coming, which is just you right now, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll get going next Wednesday. I'm going to invite people to join the recorded session of Wonderful Wisdom on Wednesdays.
What do you know what time that is, Eastern time, US?
It's the same time as these sessions in my part of the world at 2 a.m.
It's 11 a.m. Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay, that means I can only be there for an hour.
That's all right. An hour's good. We only went for an hour in the last two sessions anyway.
Okay.
Okay. Check you out.
Have a good evening. I think I'll stop the video for Sam's benefit. Oh, I can't do that. I'm just because I gave him the power. I'm just going to exit out then.